John C. Livingston Annual Faculty Lecture. Thank you all for coming. Before we start, I would like to note the passing earlier this year of Ethel Livingston, John's wife, and also Alexander Kameny, who was a Livingston Lecture 5 years ago, and we can start this afternoon. So, and please join us after the lecture this afternoon when Professor Lustig has finished his lecture for the reception food that was provided also by the President's office. With that said, please give a warm reception as we welcome back to the Livingston stage Dr. Roberto.
Good afternoon. It's wonderful to see so many students here. My esteemed colleagues and students, welcome to the 2010-2011 John C. Livingston Annual Faculty Lecture. It's an honor for me to be able to introduce our distinguished university colleague, Dr. Jeff Lustig, Professor Emeritus of Government at California State University, Sacramento. A colleague of Dr. Lustig wrote the following statement, and I quote, "Professor Jeff Lustig embodies the very essence
Thank you very much, Dr. Pomo. I think I'm going to quit right now while I'm ahead. I want to thank the Livingston Committee for this honor and the Faculty Senate. There's no award I could receive at CSU Sacramento that would mean more to me, nor any other body from whom I'd rather receive it than from my colleagues, in one of whose organizations, as Dr. Pomo said, the union, the CFA, I've been active for many years, and in which I have found many colleagues, committed colleagues and good friends. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the government department in which I have served for its support and collegiality over the years. I've been fortunate in the colleagues that I have found there, and especially fortunate in the able and amiable department chairs that I've served with, Gene Torkham, Mimi Gregg, and now Buzz Fazuni. If they're not challenged from within, the university is in trouble. The future hangs in the balance. This is where I came in. It's where I came in at the beginning of my own college career, or soon after, and how things looked from within the free speech movement and educational reform movements at Berkeley, as former land-grant universities, which had become federal grant institutions during World War II, slowly morphed into corporate grant universities. And UC President Clark Kerr, celebrated the convergence of the university and industry. Those were years of conflict. Explaining her own teaching method, urged that the university needs to, quote, take seriously and rigorously its roles as guardian of wider civic freedoms, as interrogator of complex ethical problems, and as a servant and preserver of deeper democratic practices. In conclusion, on this point, then, the American university is a place which, by instructing students and by its faculty's research, also seeks to preserve a democratic politics and to provide a means for the society to reflect on its past and possible its historic character as a community. That's what the university was historically and in medieval times, a community of masters and scholars. And the writer Paul Goodman said in 1963 that the universities were the last self-governing communities left in the United States. It's a unique community in that it's governed by this kind of institution we call shared governance, with faculty responsible for curriculum and academic affairs, and the administration responsible for the business and operations part of the accident, but by functional necessity. Nothing more is required. And no buyer should expect more. There is no care, nor desire, there's no care, no desire to develop the customers arts and powers on the part of the salesman, nor any commitment on the customer's part to master a craft or a subject matter, which mastery may change who he or she is. None of that is involved in the student as customer, but all of that we know is involved. That mutual care and obligation is involved in the relationship between teachers and students. We faculty have also found ourselves mislabeled by this effort, as when we receive customer surveys about campus services, right? We've all received those. I file these surveys in the circular file, and I hope with effort. Ultimately, this model also restored political and professional purposes, and the new model, which I simply would call a service station model of higher education, responding to what prospective employers want. The contested nature of the current campus poses difficult problems for us that defy pat answers or easy administration. We've all faced the administrators who nearly all, not all, but nearly all promote the business model today. Hopefully the students while they're here, and staff. But I want to suggest that this is centrally a job for the faculty. Ted Hornback, one of the campus's great gadflies who died a few years ago, called the faculty the core of the university. What he said was, faculty as the core of the university have an obligation to the future. This new model has to be contested to fulfill that obligation, and is part of a larger struggle to restore a lot of public goods in this state that have been cut in the last few years under the regime of privatization. As public educators in 1976, in the midst of other troubles, he wrote a campus version of the Declaration of Independence, bicentennial, 1976. A campus version of Declaration of Independence in which he declared it, quote, the right and duty of its faculty to restore the conditions necessary to the life of the mind and the education of free citizens. Restore the conditions necessary to the life of the mind and the education of a free citizenry. He and other people, Mark Toole, Harry Aaron, Bill Dorman, who's here today, and others, created something they called a Committee to Support Higher Education. And they went out to clubs and churches and meetings with legislators to explain what was going on in the state universities and what should be going on. If we don't believe students are customers, don't see the university as just a brand, but as a living community, and don't support the privatization of the People's University, then we're all going to have to renew their effort. Not to escape our job in the classroom, but in order to properly fulfill that job. If we mean to preserve the special character of campus culture, to preserve the CSU as a gateway of opportunity rather than a bastion of class privilege, and if we mean to preserve for future students the gifts our predecessors gave us, then we'll have to join the fray over higher education. The public university is indeed a treasure, the repository of historic hopes and unfinished struggles, which is why it claims our allegiance and further efforts. Thank you.